So, Shane Jacobson, Oddball, Kenny. What are some of the other?
I thought you were doing a character description to start with. Shane Jacobson, Oddball, Freak Show. Charlie
Kenny,
Boots.
Charlie and Boots, and of course a little Big Shots on TV,
Yeah.
as well as Best Days of Our Lives.
Time of Our Lives, Australia's most forgettable TV show title.
Yeah, terrible title.
It is.
And Dean, of course, you started out with Lex and Rory, which we remember back from 1994. But you've gone on to make Charlie and Boots and Strange Bedfellows, two very, very successful Australian comedies. So we want to talk about Australian comedy films just in a few moments. But firstly, you have made this film, That's Not My Dog. Now, you have been asked 1 million times a certain question. Now, you are a director. You are an actor.
Yes.
You are skilled in the art of pretense. So I'm going to ask you a question that you have been asked 1 million times, and
Yes, I'm aware I look fatter on screen than I am in real life.
And I want you to respond to the question as though you've been asked it for the very first time. Gentlemen, congratulations on your movie, That's Not My Dog. Why did you guys make it?
Shane and I always talked about the fact that no one tells jokes anymore, or very few people, and we both had dads that were huge joke tellers. And growing up, my dad was constantly telling jokes, as was Shane's dad. And we were chatting one day saying, wouldn't it be fun just to try and keep the whole joke telling, legacy, I guess, alive? So we decided, talked about different ways of doing it. In the end, we said, let's just throw a party, invite the funniest people we know, and see what happens.
Well, Shane, what's going on? What do you mean it's a dying art form?
Because it is.
When
was the last time you were told a joke? Because if we'd have asked each other that question 20 years ago, you'd go, oh, well, and people would fire into it. And what happens now is kids now, when I say kids, like all of us to do it, go, oh, this is hilarious. Have you seen this? And they hand their phone over. People look at it and go, huh, pass it to the next person. They go, huh. Someone else goes, yeah, seen it, and they pass the phone back. It's a question that's come up since we've made the film. We've been asked a lot, and a few people said, are mobile phones to blame? I think partly, but let's not make out they're the devil. Other people said maybe it's political correctness, but there's still plenty of good jokes out there where no one's left to pay the bill for it.
You're also talking about the nature of stand-up comedy, though.
Yeah, there you go.
Where basically stand-up comedians have become anecdotalists.
Yes.
Yes. I went to the video store the other day, and it's all basically a narrative.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with great narratives. I mean, Robin Williams was great at it.
Correct.
But what you're referring to are the Jackie Mason type of bang, 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 rat-a-tat-tat jokes.
Exactly.
The knock-knock jokes, the dad jokes. And your film is full of back-engineered puns and cheap jokes and blonde jokes and, jokes about the Irish. And I don't know if there's a mother-in-law joke in there. But
there should be. There should be.
But it certainly falls within the remit of the kind of jokes that you're talking about. So tell me again about I'm interested in the political correctness angle, because I have a joke criticism of the film, which I'm going to lay to you in a minute, which I think will illustrate the point. But just tell me a bit about the political correctness in comedy and what damage that's doing.
Yeah, and look, I've not measured the damage, nor have I paid much attention to it. And as we all know, let's be honest, there was racist jokes galore when we were kids, and I think it is time to stop that. Like, no one should be left, as I said before, and it's an expression I use, no one should be left to pay the bill for comedy. I think the perfect joke is one that an entire room can laugh at. If people can be a little bit prudish, they might be offended. But it is time to neaten jokes up a bit. But I keep saying people's dietary requirements have changed a lot over the last 20 years, but we haven't stopped serving food. So you just got to be a bit more careful about what it is you prepare to make sure that no one gets sick as a result of eating your food. Surely we want to feed people and make them feel good as well as fill them up. Well, the same with humour. You want to make them laugh and enjoy it. So, we've got to be smarter. It's time to be smarter, but it doesn't mean we've got to stop telling them.
What I think your film is asking is for people to have a sense of humour about their sense of humour.
Yes.
For instance, when you get Dave Allen making the best Irish jokes, and when you get Jim Owen making great Irish jokes, well, obviously, there's a level of offence which is actually much further away than people now determine. They think it's much, much closer. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah,
Now,
it is. It really is.
This is a politically correct attack on your movie, and I want you to comment on it. This film features a whole lot of Australian comedians. There's not one Aboriginal comedian in there. So this film is racist, man. You made a racist movie.
Paul
There you go.
Fennick.
You're anti-Indigenous.
Yeah.
Paul
people.
Fennick is in it. He's
He's a Malteser.
half and half, he said.
Yes.
Half Aboriginal, half Maltese. He said that on the night. He said, I'm a half and half. And I went, oh,
Yeah.
fair
I
enough.
think
Is that the kind of-
Aborese? I think he said.
But I mean, is that, because that in some quarters, people would say that legitimately, or think that they're legitimate in attacking your film because it doesn't have this tiny representation in the film, that it's somehow it's a racist film. This is the kind of overreaction that we get now in comedy, and I think it's one of the reasons why perhaps you're saying that certain forms of it are dying. Again, what is it about the boundaries that keep closing in rather than pushing out? Because comedy's meant to push them out.
You know, I've said that the comedy is supposed to be the safe haven for opinion, and it's supposed to be just an amusing observation. And it used to be, and I know that's what you're alluding to, that, you know, comedy used to be the area where you could joke about anything. Jewish comedy was amazing at just having a go at itself and everyone else. But the thing is, comedy, you know, does belong everywhere, I think. But, you know, I've said this a million times. The funniest funerals you're ever going to go to are a Jacobson funeral. But it doesn't mean I can walk to someone else's funeral and go, oh man, have I got a cracker for you. But at a Jacobson funeral, laughter is served first on the menu. It's entree, mains and dessert. And a story I've told recently, which is where you go, okay, the world doesn't all see comedy as fitting in every scenario. When my dad had cancer and has survived it, you know, it's got a great ending to this story. But Dad was in intensive care and was in a really bad way. And me and my brother were sitting in intensive care, holding his hand, and very aware of Dad's situation, of course. But every time there was he had more things plugged into him than aisle 7. There was more hoses in him than there was in aisle 7 at Bunnings. And the whole time we were sitting there was machines making all kinds of noises, and there was one machine in particular would go ping, and it kept going ping, and every time it did, me and my brother would take it in turns going, oh shit, it's run out of coins, and we'd all reach in our pocket trying to find another 20-cent coin. So we're doing all that kind of stuff, and at one point we both leant into Dad, and Dad couldn't speak at this point after his operation. They had to cut out his whole stomach. He had esophageal cancer, and as you know, when they find cancer in your letterbox, they take out the whole front lawn. And so, like I say, he was in a bad way, and so he couldn't talk or communicate. But if he kind of laughed or had some kind of altered state for a moment, be it laughter or otherwise, you'd see a bit of fog would turn up in his mask, and then it would slowly disappear. So that's how we knew he was kind of enjoying the comedy, if you will. It's a pretty limited response, but we took it nonetheless. And at one point, me and my brother leant in and we said, look, Dad, we've got something very serious to ask you. Dad, if you don't make it through the night, there's something we'd both like to know. And we leant in and said, who gets the Nissan Patrol? Dad had this four-wheel drive. Now, at that point, I got taken away by a nurse who pulled me aside and said, this is not a place for humour. And I thought, oh my God, I'm about to get a lecture about where humour belongs, sitting beside my dad, who trained me in the art of comedy. Without him, me and my brother, you know, he was our, you know, the funniest man I'm ever going to meet and have ever met is my dad. And it's going to be impossible to beat him in my world. And I've got this lady who's about to lecture me on where comedy belongs. And I'm thinking it belongs right here in this room, right now, for this man especially. He's the mayor of a town called Comedy, in my mind. And she said, your father back there is very, very ill. This is not a laughing matter. And she started to lecture me a bit. And at the end, I said to her, and I was a bit annoyed by it, but by the same token, they were doing an amazing job. And I had to say to her, look, you don't have to tell us how sick our father is. That's one thing. We've got that. And, you know, for every second of every minute, we worry an hour's worth of worry per second, because we're very aware we may lose our father and he means the world to us. But I have to say, we're not that smart. You guys are incredible with your medical knowledge. We don't have that. I'll never have that. So you do your thing, and this is what we do. And I reckon between us, we can probably get him through this. So let's just meet at the other end and see how it worked out. Well, it worked out great. He's alive. And so at that point, to go back to answering your question, where does it belong? Where are the boundaries? Well, for us, the Jacobsons, belongs everywhere, and there are no boundaries. But it's not like that for the rest of the world. This nurse, no, and other people's funerals, no. But at ours, it's everywhere.
Well, it's something that Chris Rock said, it's context. it's got to be in a context. You can make a racist joke or a joke about race. It is the context that determines whether or not it's appropriate or not. On the set of Buddy Buddy by Billy Wilder with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, both elderly gentlemen at that time, Walter Matthau took a fall and he was on his back and people were very, very worried. Oh my God, what's happened? Jack Lemmon goes up to him and he's, "Are you okay?" And Walter Matthau goes, "I make a living." This is a true story. Now, gentlemen, the film was very enjoyable. I saw it as raw material. Why didn't you make a film, a comedy movie, on this premise of a stand-up comedian telling old jokes in an atmosphere where political correctness is telling him you can't make jokes about Irish people?
Yeah, we did. We did. It's called That's Not My Dog.
Yeah, no, but I mean a feature film.
Yes, I know what you
Is there still potential for maybe turning it into a feature film? Was that ever a prospect?
I think trouble is when they do a lot of stand-up in feature films or joke telling, there's something that gets lost. And I've never seen a film, you may be able to have some examples, where someone does stand-up comedy that actually works in a film. You can watch it like on the Melbourne Comedy Gala and watch it on TV and get a laugh, but as soon as it goes to that next stage of somebody on stage performing, there's just something lost. So for Shane and I, we wanted to keep it really authentic, which is why we set the vibe of a real party as best we could. And the comedians coming along, none of them had any idea what they were doing. They just knew they were coming along to tell some jokes, but had no idea. And when they got there, they're going, "Do we perform on the stage? What's happening?" We said, "There's no stage, nothing like that. We're just, you're at a party, you're having fun." And we put music on, got that vibe going, and all night they kept forgetting that we were shooting a film. And Fiona O'Loughlin in particular many times kept saying, "Oh, I'm sorry guys, I forgot the camera's here," and whatever. She'd start chatting about something else because she said, "I just feel as though I'm at a real party." And that's what we wanted to try and achieve. And as Shane always said, it's as though if he'd invited his friends to a party, he said, "You want to come along? It's 30 of funny people I know, all these bands, come along and be a part of it." People go, "Yeah, that sounds like a hell of a night." And that's what we wanted to achieve. And it was a hell of a night.
Did you actually shoot it on one night?
Primarily, yeah. Some of the arrivals and things, but the comedians and everyone, we all got them along together, and they loved it because they said they never get to spend time together in that environment. They said they're rushing on the stage as someone else is coming off and they're heading off to another gig, and they said so for all of them just to get to hang out and make each other laugh, they loved it, which was really nice.
Well, the only thing we've got to reveal at this point is everyone did have a great night. There was one person who didn't, and that's the sound guy, because when you're talking about 36 radio mics plus all the mics for the bands, trust me, the only person that goes,
he looks stressed.
This is the shittest idea ever. Is when Dean's like, because with Dean had to, as the director, Dean very humbly says he just pressed record on a lot of cameras and stood back. But the planning that went into it, which is all, that's why I like having Dean direct things. I can go, well, that's your problem. You've got to make this happen.
That's not bad though. You made a 90-minute feature film in basically a day and a bit shooting the band.
Yeah.
The only example, by the way, just coming back to your point about feature films with Lenny with Dustin Hoffman, I think maybe the only film where the stand-up comedy is part of the drama. So I was thinking of movies like Punchline with Tom Hanks.
And the stand-up doesn't work in Punchline. You sort of accept that he's a comedian, but you don't laugh watching him do it. So
what was one Billy Crystal? Billy Crystal was in
Mr. Saturday Night.
Which was a terrific film.
Yeah.
That was more about television comedy.
It was.
My favourite year's another one, but we're getting slightly off the track. Anyway, that's. I thought, this is if this was America, a producer might have seen this film and said, let's buy the movie and use this as, we'll put it on the DVD when the feature film comes out, and let's make a film based on this. Now, guys, both of you have got so much experience in making the rarest of all things, successful comedy feature films. Charlie and Boots was hugely successful. Oddball made about $10 million. It's enormous.
Yeah, I think it went to 15 or something. Now it's been played around the world. I've watched myself.
You're just showing off.
Yeah. The one I've enjoyed the most is me in Greece. I think it's called Giotto. It must mean dog or something, or how fat's the lead.
Charlie in Boots in Germany is called Crocodile Daddy.
That's right.
And they've got Paul Hogan holding a crocodile on the cover of it.
And Strange Bedfellows, again, counter to whatever was happening in in 2005, I think it was a huge success. Kenny, of course, has become legendary. These are successful Australian comedy films. That said, Shane, this is very awkward, but I'm sitting in the barbecue down at High Point, and I'm in a cinema by myself, and I talked to the girl who ripped up my ticket, and I said, do you mind if I ask how the film has gone today? It was the opening day. And she said, sure. And she told me that there was like 8 people in the first session, 3 people in the following session. They had a couple of online bookings, but the film is made at the moment about 500,000. So,
I actually don't know, so you're telling me at that point.
It's made a little bit of
money, yeah.
But,
yeah, not big money, not big money. Yeah.
It's not a film that really hits those comedy beats that you need to hit. So something obviously went very wrong with that film. But you've been in a lot of films where everything's gone right.
Yes.
You've directed films where things have gone right. What is it about the elusive art of comedy film that makes it so difficult for Australians to do it? Americans pump them out like nobody's business. But what is it about Australia? Do we need test screenings as part of the process? Do we need more money? What's the deal?
Oh, yeah, yes. Test screenings are done. There's one thing I said that's funny. I mean, a few people have been chatting recently because barbecue's been getting slammed, and there's 2 things I say, which is I'd be interested in having a film critic review a film before it's made. Hand them the script, because that's the point that we have to make our decision to go in it. I'd love to be able to hand a script to film critics and go, so critique this film based on how you think it'll turn out, and then you get locked in a room, and then we go and make the film and shoot it, and then the budget and the restraints of this and weather and that cast member's fallen over, or the car didn't turn up, and we've got to shoot this out of sequence and blah, 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 and then see how it matches up at the end, because we have to do that as performers, and when you're writing them, some stuff that, and I mean, gosh, we could turn this into a 4-hour conversation, but some gags work better on paper, and then when you get them on their feet between 2 actors, they kind of go well, and then you put them in a setting, and then the way that gets delivered or perceived by an audience based on the emotion they were left with from the scene before. All of that changes. So it's a bit like raising a child. Everyone on earth that's a parent gets a child, and the mother and the father hope to raise a perfect child that lives a great existence. Good luck with that, because that's how everyone starts it. And the other thing is, no one sets out to make a bad film. No one. Having said that, sometimes you read reviews like, I think people think that it's almost like people have actually set out to annoy Australia, but it's not. And the film The Barbecue, for me, is, I don't know what people thought they were going to see, but it is exactly the film that I thought we were making.
Right.
Which is a family, just a general family, bit of a laugh here and there, but it's funny when you say comedy, people go, it needs to be outrageously funny. But it's funny because when a heavy metal rock band puts out a ballad, they go really well. But I don't ever see someone go, I can't believe that they've written a ballad.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be a rock band. And you go, well, that's the expectation. So the other thing is, I have said too that I think if you were to hand a food critic a sausage in bread, just a sausage in bread, nothing else, no plate, not even a napkin, you just hand it to them. I mean, okay, we'll give them a napkin. Let's go all the way.
Okay.
They would tear it apart. But the truth is, if you go to Bunnings on a Saturday, they cannot cook enough of them. Because the people going to Bunnings go, oh, sausage and bread, that's exactly what I feel like. But is it a proper meal? It's probably not. It's just a sausage and bread. So every now and then, I think that, and I don't know whether this answers your question, but I know it's being torn apart. But I've got friends who are coming out of the cinema, like average, everyday humans that I spend my life mixing with, coming out going, that was a bit of fun. And they don't want their money back. So from that point of view, I think we've been all right.
And we also have to factor in the fact that films now have a post-theatre life. So it may very well become a huge hit once it starts.
Or just
streaming.
enjoyed. Yeah, and it's edge and box office, as we know, a lot of the time dictates to some people whether a film was a success. Ed Sheeran was a busker.
Yeah.
Doing the same stuff he's doing now on a massive stage, but he's making more now doing the same thing. But he was equally as good when he was a busker as he is now that he's getting paid a fortune.
I've spoken to A-list American comedy directors, Adam McKay, for instance, who tell me, despite all their experience, they say they will not make a comedy film unless it's written into the contract that the thing gets test screened to within an inch of its life. And they say they'll go back and they'll recut a scene for a matter of a couple of seconds to make the joke funnier. Yeah. It's that kind of intensive test screening process. Now, we don't have that in Australia.
Don't have the money.
Should we? Yeah, should we?
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it'll ever happen. A friend of mine edited a movie called Bulletproof with Adam Sandler.
Yes.
And they
And
kept...
one of the Wayne guys.
Yeah, and it wasn't a great film, but they kept going back and recutting the last sequence, and then they went back to Mexico like 3 times and reshot the final sequence for test screenings. And they would have spent millions of doing just the reshoots, more than we have for an entire budget. So the Woody Allen approach works well, where you often reshoot half of his movie, but we don't have that luxury. So, but it's so hard with comedy, and we saw that on the night when we were doing this. Like, comedians bring out the best jokes, and you see the crew. Some would really laugh at a joke, and others wouldn't. And then the next one, they'd laugh at opposite things. So it's so subjective.
Now, you guys are releasing this as an event film over, I think it's 5 days. It's been released over 5 days.
I'd have to count.
Now,
15,
the reason,
16, 17, 18. 4.
What's the reason for this? Have you very intelligently worked out that if you have a film out for a very limited number of days, people need to decide, well, if I'm going to see it, I need to see it in these few days rather than wait 3 or 4 weeks when it'll be off?
Yeah.
What's the reason?
Very intelligently, we left it in the hands of the distributors. They felt that the event screenings was a better way to go. So, because comedy, like if you go to the Melbourne Comedy Festival and you watch a show with only 6 people in the audience, it's nowhere near as much fun as if there's 100. So they wanted to sort of drive all the crowds into, hopefully the crowds, into the... over a weekend, and so it's more an event because that's the whole vibe of the party.
And I've said pretty much everyone's got a TV at home now, and yet when the grand final's on, everyone goes to a pub to watch it. And they've got beer in their fridge, they own a fridge, they've got a really comfortable couch, plenty of room to swing their arms, and a TV. But they don't do that. You go and have the collective experience. And I've also said, imagine if U2 or the Rolling Stones said, look, we're going to play in the park across the road over the next 3 months. Just come across whenever you're ready. Like, there'd just be groups of 100 at a time standing there watching the Rolling Stones. And it, again, would be the same people doing the same songs and the same performance, but it's only fun when there's a crowd. And so we definitely want this. And the other thing is, it is comedians telling jokes and live music. And this is where I think it's not a bad offer. If you actually said to someone, look, we're going to put on a concert, we've got 30 comedians coming on, they'll tell 3 or 4 fantastic jokes each. And not only that, we've got Russell Morris, we've got Joe Camilleri, Dan Kelly, Christy Williams going to get up, and Christy William Brown's going to get up and sing a song, and the meltdowns are amazing. And we're going to charge you the same price as a movie ticket. I reckon the joint should be packed.
Yeah. Well, good luck with it.
Thanks,
Hopefully
mate.
it does happen. Shane, I've got just one formal part of the interview. Last question for the formal part of the interview. You are probably the most liked Australian personality
Oh, my God.
around now. It's remarkable. You've been on the main stage in terms of your public persona for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you were just the most liked. You're the most affable. Even when you're in a film that doesn't work, people still like you.
God
In
love
fact, I blame the barbecue because you're so likable in the film. I thought maybe he should be playing against his likability a bit to give the character a bit more
edge. Yeah.
Have you thought comedically, even dramatically, of playing against your likability, as some comedians have done?
Yeah, can't wait for you to see Brothers Nest. It comes out in May.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's my brother's literally just getting off a plane now at South by Southwest. So we've got a film called Brothers Nest, which Rolling Stone magazine said this week they think it's going to be the sleeper hit of South by Southwest. That's a very, very, very dark film, like a very dark Fargo. My character's got bits within him that are likeable, but it's far from a comedy. It is Kenny, it ain't. So
Can we talk about that then? That'd be great.
yes, you bet we will.
Now,
We're not leaving, just so you know. You can stop the interview, but we're staying with you, Jim. I'm staying at your place for the next 2 months. I've got 4 kids. It's pretty loud at mine, John. I'm coming to stay with you.
Thank you so much for that. Shane, you were great as a host on Little Big Shots.
Thanks,
you made
mate.
a point about it not being a competition.
No.
It sounded like something you were very eager to say
Yeah.
to people, to take the competitiveness out of it and just
Yeah,
enjoy kids for kids.
and look, it's the format that does that. Ellen DeGeneres is the executive producer of it, so it's her heart and mind that have allowed that to happen. Which is, just let them shine. It's their show, and it's not my show. And all the crew know it. It is not what it is kids with us, and it's not just talent. It's not a talent conquest. And you can't have some kid that's got an amazing sporting ability, or someone that has some hobby they've taken to the nth degree, and a young kid who can play piano amazingly. We can't score them against each other, so let's just look at it for what it is. And as a parent of 4 kids, like they've all got different skills, and if one of them reads incredibly well, And here's the thing, you know, if you've got, you know, I'm in a situation where I've got a child who's dyslexic and a child who's autistic. They're all going to have different skills, but you don't rate them. You don't go, I tell you what, Liv, you are you are my favourite child. I'm scoring you a 10 to be a child, and I'm giving you, Will, a 4. They're all going to have different skills, and as a parent in life, and I think humans. I think parenting is a great level. It's so selfless. And it means if the world would kind of existed like that you just went, we're just here to celebrate what you can or can't do.
It was just great seeing a show that didn't have a panel of judges.
Correct.
Kids are growing up.